What is up, witches, wizards, humans, and lizards? I am Sarah.
I'm JJ.
I'm Time.
And you are clocking in for the Witching Hour. This is a podcast where we have a lot of opinions, and we aren't afraid to share them. Today, we're going to dive in with some hot takes about the publishing industry before we go deep into the process of what it takes to get a book published. So grab your elixir of choice and settle in. We've got a lot to share. So let's kick this off with some hot takes. Let's talk about hybrid publishing. Is it just vanity publishing? What is it? Who knows?
Do any of us really know? Do we know what hybrid publishing is?
Let me tell you something. I have no idea. Me personally, no clue.
Well, hybrid publishing is not just vanity publishing. That is important to clear up. Some hybrid publishers can be kind of predatory. They pretend like they have standards, but they actually do just publish everything that they are sent for money.
Mm-hmm.
But what a hybrid publisher actually is that instead of the author taking on all the risk as a self-publisher, or the publishing house taking on all of the risk as a traditional publisher, it's a combination of the two. So both the publishing house and the author invest into the production of their book, and then they split the rewards more evenly down the line. So the risk is shared more evenly across the board.
Which vanity publishing can look like that sometimes, depending on how it's set up. But it's like the stipulations, I think. Because like with vanity, sometimes, like most of the time, if you submit it, they'll take it. They're like, yes, please. But then you can also get into where they're only going to work with you if you work with their team for editing or for graphic design or different things. Having done self-publishing and then almost signing with a vanity publisher, I think hybrid publishing is the way to go.
I think so too, depending on what your goals are. Here's actually, this is quite a hot take. Sometimes I think vanity publishing is the way to go. But only if, 1, you have expendable income. 2, you don't care about book sales. You just want to say that you've been published, and you want to go through a publishing company as opposed to doing it yourself. Like, so you will pay somebody to edit your crappy book and make a cover for your crappy book, and then be like, look, I published a book, even though it sucks. So I think vanity publishing is a good option for people who are really, really tightly holding on to their creative vision and aren't interested in hearing what other people have to say, maybe aren't as interested in the marketing aspect or the success of selling books. They just want to be able to say, look, I wrote a book and it was published by a real company. Because there is a stigma against self-publishing these days since the barrier to entry is so low.
That, you bring up a really good point that I want to expand on. It's connected, I swear, but loosely. The pretentiousness of the writing community when it comes to people just trying to write is a little insane to me, and that extends to publishing as well. I feel like I see a lot of people who are like, oh, you didn't get traditionally published, then you're not a real author. Do you want to meet me out back behind the 7-Eleven real quick? is my response to those people. I don't know. I feel like, from what I know, that hybrid publishing is a great tool, right? Because traditional publishing is so difficult and it's almost like winning the lottery. Like, you can have a fantastic work, super polished, super entertaining, would find an audience, but then you have, we'll not say their names, but traditional publishing houses that they just get so many queries all the time, they just skip right over it. And that's when a hybrid publishing house can really be to your benefit as an author. Vanity, let me tell you about vanity publishing. There's one genre of book that I think should only be published through vanity publishing, and that is extreme horror. Because it's so extreme and so offensive and so gross that I can't imagine. And these books are in fact published traditionally or hybrid, whatever. To me, it would make more sense for the author to bear the brunt of that entirely.
Well, so that would be self-publishing, not vanity publishing.
Right. True.
Because vanity publishing, someone would still have to read it.
Which would be so terrible with an extreme horror novel.
That's a really good point, actually, because even though those extreme horror novels do have an audience, I think I agree that you shouldn't be inflicting that on people who aren't interested.
Yeah.
And
it just feels disrespectful to me.
No, I agree. Like, because it is very niche, and a lot of the topics that extreme horror gets into are not palatable to the majority of people. And this is not to say, I'm not trying to yuck anybody's yum. If you like extreme horror, that's totally fine. But I do think, since the subject matter can be disturbing, it should be kind of kept within its own community.
And I feel like they know that, right? Like, the people writing these books, they know, or they should. Someone should tell them if they don't know. Because it's just, I can't imagine being an editor, right? Like, as someone who has done editing as like a side hustle, I can't imagine someone bringing to me even a short story that falls in that genre, and me having to go over it and like correct grammar for something that is so obscene. And like, I've read them. I've read them because curiosity killed the cat, right? I read it one time as fast as I could and could barely maintain composure. Having to edit that?
Well, yeah, because also with editing, like, it's not a one and done. Like,
no.
Depending on like where your area of expertise is, you may be doing multiple edits on that work.
Yeah, so I guess my hot take is there's one genre in this world that should be self-published and avoided altogether by every publisher, and that is extreme horror. It should exist. It should exist if there's an audience. But because that audience is so dedicated, they can go find the self-published materials.
Yeah.
Well, but even then, too, like, you could have a vanity publisher, for instance, that, like,
focuses on that.
That is their niche. Yeah. But, like, Spellbound, like, we're mainly fantasy. So, like, imagine getting something like that in our queries. I don't know how I would react.
Violently.
We would very gently say that we are not the right fit.
Yeah.
Like, I suggest that you self-publish this, actually, and do not pay anyone else to look at it. Other people should be paying you to look at it. You need to be getting consent before someone else looks at this.
Yeah. I will say, though, I do agree, though, that vanity publishing has its place. That's why it's a thing. And I think there's such a stigma to it that is problematic, because that stigma does get applied to self-publishing and hybrid publishing as well. And it becomes this, like, well, you're not good enough to do it traditionally, so you're having to settle. Even though some people, their writing is really great, it's just not what, like, the trad houses are looking for in that market right now. So they have to take other avenues, which there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I think people don't realize that, like, even the name vanity publishing, it's got a negative stigma because, like, you're so vain, you're so into yourself and your writing, but you should be.
Well, and you know what? Yes. First of all, yes, you absolutely should be so into yourself and your own writing, because you have to champion your work in order to get anyone else interested in it. But what you just made me realize too is that because of vanity publishers, there's this huge thing in publishing, which is never ever pay for publishing. But that's crazy, because everyone pays in one way or another. Like, if you are signed with a traditional publisher, you pay with your time. You pay by waiting for weeks for a response. You pay for only getting paid a piddly little advance and then 5% royalties after.
Yeah.
You are paying in losing your creative freedom. And with self-publishing, if you are not paying for an editor, you should be. Or, you know, if you can't afford it, because I don't want to sound classist, I saw this really terrible take on TikTok going around where it was like, people who are saying you need an editor are basically saying that poor people shouldn't write books and don't deserve to have their stories told. It's like, that's not true at all. What we're saying is, no book is perfect the first time around. That's it. Like, there are plenty of free resources to get your book edited. That's all that means, is that writing a book is not really a one-person job.
Right.
Well, and I mean, too, if you want to put in the work, really, you could do, like, where you read it out loud, or have, like, a close friend read it out loud to you, and you could get as much of it cleaned up as you could and then send it to an editor, and then you're paying less.
That's true.
But that's a lot of work, right? That's why editors cost money. So
Exactly.
there's the give and take there. You do, I feel like you at least need one good passover from an editor. It's hard to critique your own work, but I think there are ways that you can get to a good place where you're not spending so much money, if that's a problem.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, there are many other avenues. Like, you could go ask your English teacher to proofread it for you. You could ask your mom, who has read 10 times as many books as you. If you don't have a mom or an English teacher, you could go to the library and ask the librarian for help. Like, there are ways. Or just find an audience who doesn't care about grammar.
Exactly.
But if you do that, you can't get mad when people who are used to reading trad pub read your self-published work and say, this isn't isn't as good, because it probably isn't from a polished standpoint.
Right, and that's just because you don't have the resources. It's not on you as an author, really.
Exactly,
truly.
yeah. It's not like, well, you're a bad person and you should never write another book. Like, no, keep
Right.
writing, keep reading, keep learning.
Well,
Yeah.
and I do think at least make sure the grammar's good. Like, if you can only afford like one round of editing, or you only know people who can do like the grammatical side of things, especially if your book is part of a series, that's going to be the most important part, is that it is like polished to a technical aspect, because people are going to notice that a lot more like readily than they're going to notice plot holes. And if it's part of a series, the plot hole can always be addressed later on. But if you aren't capitalizing or you're not using correct punctuation, that's gonna put a lot of people off.
Well, and that for me is what really tends to set apart self-published books from other, I won't even say like traditionally published, because even hybrid publish, indie publish, traditional publish, those all go through rounds of edits. So for me, that is what tends to set them apart. And I'm not saying that trad pub books are perfect. I'm just saying if you're doing
They're
it
really
all by
not.
yourself, they're not. But if you're doing it all by yourself, things are more likely to fall through the cracks. And that, honestly, is a disservice to the book. Like, it's not, again, this isn't an indictment on the author at all. Like, this is all in service of having a better, more readable story.
Well, and two, I think part of it for me is that I feel like a lot of people forget that writing is an art form.
Mm-hmm.
It's art, and like all types of art, drawing, painting, singing, whatever, it can be good and rough, but it's not going to really go anywhere unless you have it polished, right? The polish is what makes it a final product that can be consumed by the masses. Otherwise, like, I've read short stories that have never seen the light of day when it comes to editing, and I had a great time reading them, right? Or fan fiction, for example, is a great example. Those are almost never edited, and it's great. It's great. It's fun. I would not pay $35 for it.
Yeah.
No, but I will read the hell out of it. Yeah, because you can tell also they're passionate.
Yeah, exactly. It's about the passion more than anything. If you're writing a story and you're not passionate about it, in my opinion, don't bother, because I'm going to tell. I'll know. And so I would much rather read a rough work that clearly was like love, time, and dedication was poured into it than a polished trad published book that just is soulless.
I agree. However, I do think that what you just brought up is like the missing piece that made it like click in my brain. I think once you start asking other people for money for it, at that point, the work is no longer yours. So it needs to be up to the standards of those other people. How do I say this without falling into that trap that the TikTok girl said of poor people don't deserve to have their stories read? Because that's not what I'm trying to say. But I do think that once you are asking for other people's money, once there is an exchange happening, which is what happens if you publish on, even if you self-publish on Kindle, at that point, you need to be up to the standard of the other things that are being sold on Kindle. And that includes traditionally published books.
Right. Traditional publishing. You are not out of pocket paying for that, right? And because of that, it's incredibly difficult to go through. Otherwise, you are fronting the cost for publishing in every other avenue. In every other avenue, you're at least fronting something. So if you can't front any money for editing, marketing, graphic design, publishing, if you cannot, your solution then is to either self-publish digitally or do traditional publishing. And that's just, we live in a capitalistic society. That's just how it is. Poor people can rarely do much of anything other than work and survive. And I would know. And I'm right there. I'm with you.
Poor person.
Right. Here I am. And so those arguments of oh, you're charging people to publish your book, you hate poor people. No, it's called you live in the US.
Yeah.
You live in a Western country. Sorry. I don't know what to tell you. It sucks. Yeah, it does. I wish every good book, every good story, every dedicated author could have a wonderful published book and get 1 million sales. I would love that. However, that's not going to happen, right? That's beyond our scope. That's beyond anyone's scope. So if you can't afford to front the money, go to a hybrid publisher, go to a vanity publisher, then you're going to have to wait in those lines at the trad publishing house. That's just how it is. That's why they're there, honestly.
Yeah, that's true.
And then I step down from my soapbox and I look so beautiful when I do it.
Yeah, it was like a little breeze.
Yeah, my robe flows behind me. Yeah, that's my real hot take.
That's great. Well, and that's actually an excellent segue into the meat of this episode, which is just what is book publishing anyway? So I have a little article from the Publishers Association, publishers.org.uk. So it's a real website, and I have a little thing. It's how publishing works, because we've been talking a lot about, well, just go trad pub, just, you know, here are your publishing options, but we haven't actually talked about what any of that really entails. So there are 10 steps on this little list here, so I'm going to go through them real quick so we can learn what the process of getting published traditionally actually looks like. Step number 1, an author finds an agent to represent their work. Agents read a lot of manuscripts and decide which ones they think they will be able to sell to a publisher. Some authors don't have an agent, but most major publishers find the majority of their books via literary agents. Step number 2, the agent offers the book to editors who work at publishers. The agent will negotiate the terms of the contract. Sometimes several editors will want to buy the book. The agent and the author shop the book around and decide what's the best fit. I guess also there may be an auction, and whoever offers the most money wins. That sounds nice. I would like to have people bidding on my work.
But I'm also curious though, like when they're making those monetary offers, are the terms of publishing on the table as well? So like you already know what your royalty share would be and things like that, or is it just?
I assume so, because that's all covered with the terms of the contract, I think. Step number 3. The editor buys the book and works with the author to edit it. Editing a book usually takes around 16 months. Now here's another hot take that I have about book publishing. People who are publishing 3 books a year, what are you doing?
Yeah. Not editing it.
Like,
I'm sure y'all have heard of this. There are people who publish like 40 books a year.
That's
like
crazy.
for real. Like for
And I
real,
don't-
40 books.
How long are they,
either
though?
that means you're constantly writing and editing and revising, but I highly doubt it. Like,
Or you're using AI.
Yeah, it's
tune
like
in for a later episode.
truly deeply. I think it's a lot of like those cheap romance books you buy at like the dollar store, where like
Yeah.
if you buy one of those and you really like, if you were to do like an academic analysis of a dollar store
Yeah.
romance novel, you would understand why there's so many of them.
Yeah, there's like an outline. You're just changing out the names and like a few details and
Yeah,
slapping a different Harlequin cover on it.
it's very Hallmark movie.
That's true. Well, and you know, there is a place for books that are like sugar pills that just kind of dissolve and
Yeah,
don't leave anything behind. But
not
like,
in my
that's-
personal library, but there's a purpose.
Yeah.
There's an
well,
audience somewhere.
And again, that is why you can't. I feel like people get so up in arms where it's like, why are you dismissing romance books? It's like, well, because compared to this, a traditionally published book that takes 18 months to edit, it's just not going to be the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, so after editing, we can get more in-depth with the editing process if we want to, but we don't have to. So, after editing, the production team prepares the book to be released. So, this includes managing the overall schedule that all other departments must stick to. Then they design the cover. The sales team convinces bookshops to stock the book. Just the way that's phrased is so funny. We have to convince
They're
the
begging.
bookstores. Yes, like, please!
Begging on their hands and knees.
Yeah.
Yeah. It really is that serious, though.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
true. So now, but that is interesting because this is all long before the book comes out.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here we go. 7. The rights team sells the book to foreign publishers and also TV and film production companies. I'm going to go ahead and say Publishers Association, that is not a common step in the process.
Yeah.
Not anymore, at least.
Well, no. How old is this article?
I feel like in the 90s that was a huge deal.
Oh, sure. Well, and I'm not saying it never happens. Like with Light Lark, that
Right.
was her whole sales pitch was, book's not even out yet, and I already have a 6-figure deal with Universal or whatever.
Yeah.
I
I mean, it does happen, but for sure, like, and it depends on the publisher too. Like,
yeah, I think it's maybe more common with bigger publishers, but even
publishers
then-
that have already made those deals and have connections
yeah.
with Hollywood
Yeah.
or with like their foreign counterparts or have foreign offices even obviously
Yeah.
would be a lot easier than a smaller traditional publishing house.
Because, I mean, I want to say the last book that I, like, researched that I know got, like, rights sold was The Bone Season.
I'm gonna get you.
Yeah. And I think also the Publishers Association should probably, like, specify that just because the rights are sold doesn't mean anything's happening with it. It just means that a company owns the rights, so at some point.
Yeah. No, it literally means that they reserve the right to adapt it if they want to. And I
Yeah.
know for a fact, that movie studios hoard rights all the time, where they'll just buy up a bunch of film rights for stuff and then just sit on it.
They like having a little library.
Yeah, and if anybody else is like, well, no, I want to do it, they're like, okay, well, we own it, so pay up or get out.
The last book that I remember getting, because I don't really pay attention, but the last book I remember getting like a film adaptation was Red, White, and Royal Blue.
Mm-hmm.
And I have an anecdote about that. It had been out for a while, and I finally like bought the book and decided to read it. And I read it in one day, one sitting. It was very easy to read. And then I turned on my television, and the film had come out that day. And I was like,
Nice.
What do you mean by that? Like, what happened to me? What did I do? Who's coming to me? Like, who's coming for me?
You manifested the film.
I did, and I'm
Yeah.
really glad I did, because the film was really stupid, but Uma Thurman was the president of the United States in that film.
Yep.
And let me tell you, it was so
Yeah,
worth
and they're
it.
making a second one.
Are they really? Guess what? I'm going to watch it.
Yeah.
Guess what? I'm watching it.
Is there a sequel to the book?
Yeah, there's
I
not.
hate that. I hate when movie studios do that.
Well, because we're going to run into that problem that we did with Game of Thrones.
Yeah, where the story keeps going after the story ended.
After the books are, yeah. And
Yeah.
I'm sure it could be done correctly, but I don't think it ever has.
Well, I heard that with that new movie, The Idea of You, which was based on a book, which was based on a fan fiction, the movie did so well that they were like, let's do a second one. And Anne Hathaway herself said, no, I don't think so. One is enough.
I love Anne Hathaway.
I love that.
I
Yeah.
know.
She's my everything.
That was so brilliant of her. And she is probably the only person who had the power to do that.
Yeah.
So thank you, Anne Hathaway, for saving us from a shitty sequel that nobody wanted.
Yeah.
Anyway, after selling the TV and film rights to the book, they make the audiobook, apparently. That comes after. Then there's a marketing team. The marketing team runs a campaign for the book, driving sales, advertising, promotions, publicists work on getting media coverage, etc. If a publicist has managed to get the book talked about a lot in the media, bookshops will want to stock more copies so they don't run out. Okay?
All right.
That's great.
What?
Yeah.
This is all new information.
And then, step number 10, the book is published. So that is a very basic rundown of getting the book published. So if you were paying attention, you may have noticed that the author actually does very little besides writing the book. Pretty much as soon as they get an agent, the book is no longer their baby anymore, because the agent is going to try to sell it, and the editor is going to try to change it, either to make it more marketable or to make the story work better. With a big publisher, you can't really tell, or sorry,
Yeah.
you can tell. You don't know really what their end goal is with the edits that they're making to your book. And also, there's every chance that if you choose not to make the edits, they could potentially drop you as a client. So traditional publishing is fraught. Well, and like, you don't have a say on the cover. You don't have a say on what ads they run or what like quotes they pull from your book. So this is, I do think that this process is very unfriendly and unapproachable, and that is why a lot of authors these days are turning to self-publishing. But I do think that in general, people are only about half of the way there of like where they need to be in terms of understanding the industry and understanding all the work that goes into making a book good. And then that's why we get people who are like, well, why isn't my self-published book selling? I did all the steps. It's like, but did you do them correctly? Did you do them well? Did you understand why you were doing them?
Right.
Right.
Or are you just like ticking off boxes?
Exactly.
So you can be like, I did it.
And that's fine too, honestly. Like, if that's your goal, if that's what you want, I'm so happy for you, because that's honestly pretty easy. Like, if you're going into it with that motivation, you're gonna win. You're not gonna be my favorite author, but you'll get what you want.
Exactly. If your only goal is to publish a book, then yeah, do it yourself. But then your goal can't be mainstream success.
No.
If you're doing it yourself.
No.
Or if you're doing it by yourself at a lower level of expertise.
Even then, like, the likelihood of your debut novel being on any bestseller list or anything like that, like, get that out of your head right now. It's not going to happen.
Well,
So, you shouldn't be going into it with that expectation anyway.
And that's why I mentioned writing being art earlier, because that should never be your reason for creating art, right?
You're so right.
It really shouldn't, because as soon as you bring that slimy green dollar bill into your process, your heart is no longer there. It's not. It simply is not. That to me is the problem that I feel like a lot of authors fall into, is that they go, because obviously when you start to write a book, you're like, maybe one day my book will sell. No, whatever. That's fine. But when you're like, I'm writing this book to appeal to as many people as possible, you're not going to create something that a lot of people are going to want to read.
Do you want to hear some fun statistics?
Oh my God, yeah.
Let's talk about traditional publishing first, because that's what we were just on. So, apparently, between 500,000 and 1 million books are published each year, and that is not counting self-published books.
Whoa.
Yes.
That's insane.
Whoa, wait, okay. That really put a lot in perspective for me. Okay, hold on. Because, wait a minute. Okay. So you're telling me, so if you're an author, right, you have to fight yourself to write a book, to write a manuscript, right? Then you have to go through the whole publishing process. Whichever avenue you take, you still have to get it edited, cover design, advertised, all of that has to happen no matter what avenue. It's always going to take months, right? Past a year even. You have to do all of that, right? Then you're competing with 1 million books, 1 million other people who went through that same thing in the same calendar year. That is insane to me.
No, it's actually crazy. And that, again, that's just traditionally published. That's not counting self-published books.
You know what that is? You know what that's like to me?
Wild.
It's giving Broadway. Like,
yes.
The actors that are so talented and so beautiful and so ready walk into an audition and there's 100 people who look and act exactly like them.
Well, so are you ready for these next few numbers?
I'm scared. I don't know if I'm ready.
Yeah.
Okay. Within the book publishing industry, it is agreed that the odds of an author getting their work published stands between 1 and 2%.
Yes, which is so fucking elitist. Like, you want to talk about, the 1%? Like, hello, hi. The 1% are who getting their book published also.
If 1 million books are being published, then that means that 100 million people are trying to get their books published every year.
Right.
That's what I was literally just about to, like, say, whoa, wait.
Yeah.
That's crazy to me. I honest to God didn't. Is this worldwide? Are these stats world? They better be. They gotta be.
I think
they are.
Okay.
It must be.
Well, because if 100 million people are doing it, there's 300 million people in the U.S. There's no way a third of us are writing.
Well, no, I mean, we're all like loners sitting in the back of a coffee shop, and I've never met other authors in the wild, so it's got to be global.
Yeah. So I think some of these numbers are global and some of them are US.
Right.
Well, so if you want to do more math, a publishing house of medium or large size will often receive more than 5,000 unrequested manuscript submissions annually. However, more than 95% of manuscripts received by publishers and agents are below the level of the standard required.
Okay.
From the remaining number of high-quality manuscripts, which is under 5%, the vast majority are still rejected, usually due to not being a correct fit.
Listen, I have a hot take on that. And that is that if 95% of what you are receiving is not up to par, that is because you are gatekeeping.
Yeah. Well, and
that is not, that's gatekeeping.
Beat you up real quick, to fight you violently. I do think a lot of that is necessary with a lot of like Spellbound can't do 5,000 books in a year.
No.
Like if 5,000 people came to us with manuscripts, we could not. So we would pick the few best ones out of that list, and we would probably look more demanding than the average.
Well, and I do feel like that is valid, but I also, just knowing how much like secrecy there is surrounding like the whole process, and it's like very cloak and dagger, like
that does bug
maybe
me.
That's why, if you're getting 5,000 and 95% of that is subpar, there's a reason,
because they're not publishing what
be the talent.
They're not stating what they're looking for, honestly, like in depth.
Right.
Like they may have like a guideline, but it's clearly not correct, because there's no way that 95% of 5,000 manuscripts don't fit that.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's no way. Like statistically, there's no way.
I mean, also like considering like this is, I don't know if this is even going to make sense, but it does in my brain. So we're going to try and get it out here. A lot of the people who are querying are like the same people who are writing on like AO3 and like Wattpad and things like that, where like there is work on there that is like so deliciously like obsessed. Like you get so obsessed with it. Like it's so good that there's no way
Yeah.
that those people are getting rejected. As like the fact that they are getting rejected says a lot.
I do agree. I think it's a lot of like, what is it called? I love when I come on this podcast and suddenly don't remember a single word.
So
Elitist.
relatable.
Elitist is the word. It's already been said about 13 times. It does feel elitist to me because it's because of the lack of communication, because of the lack of accessible information. It may not be elitist. It may just be inaccessible.
Well, so are you ready for even more elitist gatekeeping?
Oh, goodness gracious.
Bring it on. God.
The big 5 publishing houses control over 80% of the trade book market in the United States as of 2022. And when it comes to revenue from book sales, the big 5 publishers generate over $12 billion per year, which is about 64% of the U.S. publishing industry's total revenue.
And how much of that is going to the author?
About $2.
Exactly.
About $2 and a piece of string.
Well, as a matter of fact, I have that number as well.
Oh, excellent.
Paperback royalties are often between 5 and 7.5%, and hardback royalties are often between 10 and 15%.
That 0.5, that 7.5 is just...
I know.
Yeah. Okay.
And even if you get an advance, like, it's just not... It's crazy.
I have a hot take about advances. I don't like them.
Oh.
I don't like them.
You don't like them?
I don't like how they're currently set up. I feel like you're getting a loan from a bank is what you're doing when you get an advance. And getting a loan from a bank works for some people. It makes me feel really anxious. And if I got traditionally published, I'm like, okay, we're going to give you an advance. Don't do that to me. Please do not give me an advance. I don't want it. I will fail. I will have to pay you money. Because if you don't sell enough books, you have to pay that back from your own money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would rather just have a higher royalty share.
Yeah.
Yeah, or they'll just withhold your royalties until they have made back whatever money they advanced you.
No, you're so right. And that is so contrary to the way that traditional publishing is presented, where it's like none of the risk is on the author. That's just not true.
All on the author. These big 5
it's
publishers.
A financial risk.
Yeah, these big 5 individuals who I will meet behind the 7-Eleven once again, they can flop 100 books in a calendar year and be fine.
Right.
They'll be fine because they've got a couple that sell a lot. And because authors are only getting so much of the royalties, they can afford to do these other books, give advances and watch them fail and then collect on the money. And I just think that's kind of scummy. It's sort of how finding out McDonald's was a real estate company, not a fast food company, was a really big heavy hit on my noggin.
Yeah.
That ruined me. Finding out about advances ruined me just as much.
Yeah. Well, and also, that's another little number that I have here. Book advances given to authors from major or big 5 publishing houses usually start at around $5,000. So if you're a debut author, that's probably what you're going to get.
Yeah.
And that is crazy to be like, yeah, here's $5,000. Thank you for your time. It'll be 18 months before you hear from us again. We hope you sell more than $5,000 worth of books. That's crazy.
That is insane.
Well, and the way that the market tends to work right now also is that you have to go viral or else no one's going to hear about your book. Especially with the clock app and everything. Either you take off or no one knows who you are.
Okay. Part of me, maybe this is crazy. Part of me really wants the clock app, as you say, to be removed from the US permanently. Because I'd love to see a return to form for publishing. And if that happens, the winning we would win. The winning that we would win. When I tell you, I would just be so excited because then, oh my God, I just need it to happen because I cannot. That's okay, for our listeners at home, I'm notoriously a huge social media hater, but I also have a communication degree and work in marketing sometimes. So it's really there's some cognitive dissonance there for me, having this responsibility a lot of times with a lot of my ventures of having to rely on social media and also really just despising that you have to rely on social media. And I think Instagram is the same as it's always been, really. you can post there and it's fine, whatever. Going viral on Instagram doesn't really do much for you, and it never really has.
Yeah.
TikTok, because of how our economy is set up now, if your audience is anyone below the age of 45, you have to reach them on TikTok, or you won't.
Yeah.
You won't have any sales. And so I would love for that to not be the case anymore.
Well, especially too, you're fighting against shadow banning also, and like
Mhm.
all of these different things that are happening. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Either way, you have to
Facebook-
cater to what the market wants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of not making any sales, let's do some statistics on self-published books.
I love these segues. I love these segues.
No, because these make me a little bit sad. Because
Oh.
I really do think that all authors just want success, but realistically, you're not gonna find it as an author.
No.
Like, at all, regardless of what avenue you go through. So you need to start setting different goals. But yeah, so for self-published books, over 90% of self-published books will sell under 100 copies during their lifetime.
Yeah.
is
I learned that
devastating to
recently,
me.
and I was, yes.
Yeah.
That's really, I don't know. My thing is like, okay, also for everyone at home, I'm not a published author. Crazy. Wow. I've never even written a novel. But the thing is, like, I do love to write. And sometimes I flirt with the idea of writing a novel, right? I think everyone who's
think you
listening
should.
has at least flirted with the idea. The thing that holds me back is not the money, right? Because I know before we even walked into the pod studio today, our expensive studio that we rent out in LA, just for everyone listening, yeah, we do that. No, we don't. Anyway,
Me sitting in my closet in LA.
yeah, please. We're all in
The
Sarah's
closet
closet.
that I rent.
Yeah, $1,000 per hour. It's so crazy. But I know that like a debut novel almost never goes anywhere. Most novels, period, don't really like it's the lottery. It's gambling. And so for me, like I would have to convince myself that it would just be for me. That it would just be like, okay, I poured my heart and soul and told a story that I am proud to tell. And if even one person reads this book, then I won. Is what my take would be. Is what I would have to convince myself in order to go through with it. Because it's such a soulless industry. It really is. Especially if you go traditionally. And I just feel like if I self-publish and I got 75 people to read my book, then I won. Then I did it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that mindset bodes really well with like the fan fiction community. Because, I mean, there's millions of published fan fictions on like AO3, fanfiction.net, whatever, that have 0 views.
Yeah.
But someone spent time on those. And if they got one single view, they would be proud. I don't know why I said that. I don't know why I brought that out, but I did.
Well, no, you're right, because, like, again, these numbers do make me sad, because I know that if you go through the work of publishing your book, it's because you probably do have dreams of at least one other person reading it.
Yeah.
But seeing this, like, here are some more, some more sad numbers. The average self-published title will sell around 250 copies during its lifetime, and I think that is skewed by the number of books that do very well.
Yeah.
Because 90% are selling under 100. On average, you're going to sell 250. That means that number is being hugely skewed by the few bestsellers. The average self-published author earns under $1,000 from book sales a year. 33% of self-published authors make less than $500 per year. And 20% of self-published authors report making no income from their books. So you have to be prepared for that to potentially be you, because 20% is 1 in 5.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I can confirm last calendar year, I made like $3.14 off my self-published book.
Yeah.
Well, and
I'm also not like marketing or anything, but still, like that's
and two,
life
I think
happens.
this is, I think what I was trying to say is that like, if you do it for the art and you assume you're going to make no money, then $3 is $3 you did not have before. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's why I think like if I got traditionally published, I would deny in advance. I didn't make money the whole time I was writing the novel. That was a pastime. And now that the manuscript is done, it's done. So yeah, you did a lot of work, but you were doing it on your own time anyway. You didn't have a boss telling you to do that. You didn't. So to me, and I know I'm not like necessarily a typical case here, this may be a hot take. Whoa. I just feel like if you approach this with a mindset of, I'm not going to make any money, then you'll have a better time. Because what if you do make money? Whoa, that's unexpected. Statistically unexpected. Like, you won.
But also, I think what's interesting is they talk about the statistic of like in the lifetime, right? But like, how are we determining a lifetime? Because I don't know why this is where my brain went, but like Van Gogh, homeboy didn't sell anything until after he died, really.
Right.
Like, he cut off his own ear because he loved his artwork so much. I mean, that's not why, but you know what I'm saying? Like, he loved it so much, he just kept going and then cut off his own ear and then did a self-portrait of it because he still loved the art so much. But then afterwards, that's whenever it took off. And so, like, how are we determining a lifetime of a self-published novel? And I know that self-published is still, like, relatively new in terms of we don't really have those numbers of, like, somebody who self-published when they were, like, 30 and then it's been out for 40 years and then they die and then maybe it takes off. But I am curious as to, like, what the metric is for that lifetime. What does that look like?
And I do want to say to everyone here, I don't know why I keep addressing it. Hi audience, I don't know why I keep addressing you specifically, but here I am. There's two people right in front of me and I'm like, no, I will not be talking to you two. I'm talking to everyone else. No, but self-publishing, unless I'm so mistaken, stems specifically from like zines and like self-publishing today, right? I believe stems from like zines and like the punk scene and the anti-establishment scene and everything, which makes sense if we think about how it operates today, right? Self-publishing is easier today than it's ever been, and that's because there's websites that will like, you send them the PDF and you better have formatted it correctly and they'll send you your copies and then you sell them, right? Or you send it to Amazon and they do the same thing and they just sell it straight from there. Easiest it's ever been. All you got to do is format the book. That, to me, I'm glad it's easy, but then you're getting like oversaturation too. A lot of these self-published books are AI. A lot of them are unedited. A lot of them are garbage. They're trash. And so I do want to say like these numbers are depressing, but also if you write your book with skill and dedication and you give actual time and thought into it, you're competing with a handful of other actual self-published authors and just a sea of garbage. And so
that's true.
There's
I'm over
that
here
too.
assuming that like each one of the okay, this one is just kind of fun. It is estimated that over 300 million self-published books are sold every year, and 1 in 3 ebooks sold in the US is self-published. So I'm over here assuming that that's 1 in 3 real humans, but you're right. There is a lot of not that out here.
Yeah. And that in of itself is, and of course, like we are going to have an AI episode, but it's just that to me is both depressing and sort of gives me a little bit of hope, because sooner than later, the world will understand that AI cannot replace humans in the creative ways that people think they can. Like, tech bros are spending millions upon millions of dollars in order to try to make the arts and humanities disappear through AI. It's not going to work. It just won't. There's a secret sauce that comes with being a human being that you will not be able to replicate through AI. And I hate Amazon. Hey, I'm going to say it out loud. I hate Amazon. But the one good thing they did do was they banned AI writing. And like, because the AI children book epidemic of like 2 years ago was a massive issue and they're cracking down on it. Now, are they enforcing that ban? I don't know. I have no idea. But they said something about it, and that is a step in the right direction in the self-published sphere, in my opinion.
Yeah, but I do kind of feel, and like, again, like we'll talk about this on the AI episode, but I kind of feel like Amazon is like plankton from SpongeBob, you know?
Yeah.
Like, there's a caveat to that. We just don't know what it is yet.
Yeah. And we're surely going to find out soon, I'm sure.
All right. All of my other statistics are kind of just random publishing statistics, so we probably... do we want to get into, like, the various isms that plague the industry, or should that be a part 2?
I would love, honestly, to get into it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's do some rapid-fire statistics, and then I will hear your thoughts. As of 2021, 50.45% of U.S. authors are women, and 49.55% of U.S. authors are men. They did not consider other genders, which I don't appreciate, but, we'll start from there. Although white authors have decreased by 7.5% since 2010, they still represent 75.5% of authors in the U.S. Black authors have increased by 0.87% since 2010 and currently represent 5.93% of all authors in the U.S. Asian authors have decreased by 0.72% and currently represent 4.93% of U.S. authors. Hispanic or Latino authors have increased by 2.96% and currently represent 7.62% of all the authors in the U.S. Finally, within the U.S., the average age of an employed author is 42 years old. 18% of authors are aged 20 to 30, 30% are aged 30 to 40, and 52% of employed authors are over the age of 40.
That,
That's
honestly,
oddly comforting.
I was just going to say that gives me like a lot of hope, actually.
I got 10 years, according to this, like to get that situated.
Yes, we ended on an uplifting statistic, but if you look at this all together, that means that the average U.S. author is
old and
a
white
middle-aged woman, over the age of 40. But like that's
which checks out.
The fact that the fact that women have is it almost a whole percent?
I will say though, like pop off women, because it's not middle-aged white men, it's middle-aged white women. However,
for once in one industry, here we go, we're winning.
However, the middle-aged white women right now be Delulu and like super Karens. So I don't know that I feel any safer.
I feel like it makes a lot of sense hearing these statistics. I wish it were a bit more balanced altogether, but the nature of things is that they're never balanced. So it checks out.
I'm honestly surprised at how, because this statistic says since 2010. So that's 14 years. And I'm surprised at how minimal the increase of Black authors is, because, and I don't know if this is just because the type of books that I read and fellow readers and writers that I surround myself by, but I feel like I personally have been exposed to a lot more Black authors, especially in the past 5 years. So it's surprising to me that in 14 years that number hasn't even increased by a full percentage. But also, and this might be a hot take, I don't know, but if you are a white person, you should not be writing BIPOC stories.
No, not at all.
That's not saying you shouldn't write BIPOC characters, but it is saying that the story should not be centered on that identity which you know nothing about.
Right.
But yeah, what I think people also don't realize is, and get defensive about, is when we're saying we need to change these statistics, we're not saying to get rid of any authors who are already out there.
Just have more authors.
It's literally just publishing more authors. I think that people, white people specifically, don't realize that there genuinely is room for everyone, at the proverbial table.
There's already 1 million published books per year. We can add some more.
Exactly. Yeah, yes. let's make it 2 million. Right. Well, because also, if you think about it, if 1 million books are being published each year, there are still 7 billion with a B people on Earth. Right. So people, even though the rate of production of books seems very high to an individual, because I couldn't read 1 million books in a year.
Yeah.
The number of people in the world is exponentially higher than that still. So the demand is still far higher than the supply. So there is plenty of room for anybody who wants to tell their story.
Well, I think also, too, that part of increasing that representation is going outside of trad and looking at hybrid publishing, independent presses, even self-publishing, to get more of those voices accessible to other people. So that way we can start changing what that demographic and what that looks like, because that is absolutely insane to me to see that like, I mean, does that even fully add up? I'm scared of numbers right now, but that doesn't even look like.
I think it does, because 75% is a huge, huge amount. So like 6-ish plus 5-ish plus 8-ish, that's about 20-ish. So you're right, it doesn't quite add up, but there was probably an other category that they didn't include.
Well, and two, something that isn't here, which is fine, like the scope of this is clearly race, but sexuality, right? Queer people in general, we are rising in the book sphere.
I mentioned that because it was like, 50% are women and 49% are men. It's like, okay, cool. What about the non-binary authors?
Right. And
what about the trans authors? What about the people who, don't fit into one of those two categories?
No, but these numbers are great numbers to see. I mean, they're horrible to see. Right, but I'm glad to have seen them, and because this has changed my outlook on the industry as a whole, really, like it has, and I hope it does that for a lot of people, because now I feel a lot more informed. Like if I do ever decide to publish anything, now I know that I'm fighting a losing battle and can be better prepared for that. Because people always say like, oh, publishing is hard, oh, it's soulless, oh, it's predatory, whatever, but like there's never any like there's nothing backing that up. Well, here it is.
You still feel like as an artist you still feel like, oh well, I'm going to be that 1 in a million who makes it big anyway. But like when you look at the numbers, it's like I am most likely not going to be that. And I think honestly, this is going to be very poetic, so brace yourselves.
Ooh.
Looking at the publishing industry not as an industry but as an art, I think is the healthiest way to approach writing a book. You have to do it for the art. You cannot do it for the industry, because the industry is against you. And if you do it for the industry, it's not going to be art.
Yeah, we can't all be Dean Koontz.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's Patterson.
Not art. Yeah, it's...
No, it's not. You know why it's not art? Because his name is larger than the title.
It really is.
Bringing that back. Well, on that note, thank you for clocking in for the Witching Hour. If you would like to share your opinions on our opinions, you can head on over to the Spellbound Publishing House social media accounts. All of the links for all of my statistics will be in the show notes, and I will make sure Time puts them there. And we will see you next shift. Bye!